Please, if you can hear me, please let me know that you can hear me. All right, great. Welcome to another session of Design with EU. My name is Tiwa. Um, Design for those joining us for the first time. Design with EU is a community for designers of every level, and every Sunday we bring on experienced designers to share their knowledge about a particular topic. We've been doing this for over a year now, and we have a couple of recordings from our previous sessions. All those recordings can be found on our YouTube channel. So after the call, you can, head over there and check it out. It's a very resourceful um, bank for any designer. And today we have Kachi, and Kachi is going to be, sharing our knowledge about working as a solo designer. And before she starts, I will just read a little bio so you get to know our speaker for today, a little, and then she can do more justice to that. Kachi is a product designer who is passionate about designing thoughtful and usable digital products that makes life easy for people. She has 6 years experience in design, a journey that started with brand identity design before expanding to art direction, advertising, and now product design. Although her paths have differed at various times within the design industry, one thing remains constant for her: telling delightful stories and designing impactful experiences for customers. She is a designer behind the designs for amazing companies such as Block, Orchestrate, and Old School. That's a whole lot. I'm really excited and really happy that we would all get to listen to Kachi speak about this topic. So Kachi, yeah, you can, go ahead and start. Thank you.
Hi, Tiwa. Thank you so
Hi.
much.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm happy to be here. And like Tiwa said, I will be talking about working as a solo designer. But first, let me share my screen so I can talk through my slides. Um, please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, awesome. So first, introduction before I jump into the topic. My name is Unitikachi and I'm a product designer at Block. So what I do at Block is mostly designing user-friendly payment systems for businesses, merchants, and also like SMEs. Before Block, I mean, like currently at Block, I work within a team. But before Block, I used to work at, I've worked at Orchestrate, is also a fintech company where I was designing for payments also. And I was working as a solo designer. I also worked at Talent Cure as the founding designer and also a solo designer. I also worked at Old School as the founding designer and also a solo designer. So most of my product design career has been working as a solo designer. So when I'm not designing, I enjoy mentoring. So I mentor at ADP List and also how I can, where we help like young women who are looking to get into UX design. I also enjoy speaking at events like this and also designing free resources on Figma community. So let's get into it. Who is a solo designer? From the name means you work as a you work alone. we call it like a UX team of one. So you're all in one. I like to say that a solo designer is a Swiss Army knife. So you're everywhere, you're doing so many things. It's just you. You don't have any other UX designer or product designer on the team to share responsibility and workload with. And in the day-to-day activities of a solo designer, you're saddled with the responsibility of improving UX maturity within the company. You're managing stakeholders, you're talking to product managers, you're crafting user stories with them, you're responsible for the user experience of the products that you're working on. You're also managing yourself because you are your own manager. So you're in charge of your own career. You're establishing processes within the company, you're documenting your designs. So it's a lot for a solo designer. And sometimes it can be challenging because, like all things I mentioned, there are quite a lot of things for one person to do. And some of the challenges might be one, low UX maturity. For someone who is working as a solo designer in a company, it means that the company may not really understand like what a UX designer does in terms of UX maturity may not even exist, right? The people you work with might not even fully understand who a UX designer is or what a UX designer does, right? Some might even think that, oh, you because you're a UX designer, you probably should be doing graphic design or you should be doing any other form of design, right? So sometimes processes are non-existent, right? And people just struggle to see or come to terms with certain ideologies that you're trying to introduce into the company. If you're talking about like research, you're talking about feasibility testing, they do not really understand this concept and how it benefits them. So low maturity is like a key problem that solo designers have to deal with. Secondly, is oftentimes design is sidelined, right? um People only see you as the person who comes in and does the fancy stuff, right? They don't see you beyond the visuals, they don't see you beyond the aesthetics. So oftentimes decisions are made and passed down to you for execution. So oftentimes you find out that a solo designer is more like an executioner. And sometimes it's if the solo designer is not intentional, sometimes they design things that they don't really understand, right? They can be designing a very beautiful interface or a very beautiful user flow, but as outside that design or outside what they have on Figma, they may not necessarily understand the big picture or how that design that they're working on fits into the business priorities. So you find out that strategy, coming up with all those documents, design is non-existent there. And when they are done, maybe the product manager or the product owner or even stakeholders, they just give you a PRD or user story and say, you know what, we need this design ASAP, start working on it. So oftentimes, this is what a solo designer struggles with. Like I mentioned, like you could see like the whole task that a solo designer needs to handle, and that's not even everything. So most times they feel overwhelmed, like you're doing so many things. In some companies, solo designers even work as content designers. They come up with their own copies themselves. So it's a whole lot. And if one is not careful, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel like under pressure because, again, in a startup world, for example, things are always moving fast. Is we need this ASAP, we need to ship this, we need to launch this. So the deadlines or the timelines you have are not exactly flexible, and it's easy to feel drowned in all of those. Another thing is creative isolation. You are alone, you're a master of your own. As much as this could also be, it could be very, very interesting because you have autonomy, but it's also scary because it means that the burden of the success of that design rests only on your shoulders. And if you're stuck, you're stuck. You don't have anyone to bounce ideas off. You don't have an extra pair of eyes to look at what you've designed and give you feedback like a designer, right? You don't have someone else who can spot issues in your design. So basically, you're in charge of all of that. And it can be daunting because if you have creative block, you have creative block. Nobody can really help you, right? So this is like have like other designers that you work with. Sometimes those little praises, like, oh, this design looks really nice, or this, they help to boost your confidence. But when you don't have any of that, then there's a case of, am I even doing the right thing? Am I making a mistake? Maybe I'm not even fit for this. And sometimes this imposter syndrome can push people to actually leave organizations or leave roles where they're the only designer. I know I've mentioned a lot about the challenges, and as much as they are challenges, that's what makes us designers, not just only UX designers, but like designers in general. The goal of a designer is to solve problem, and this is a problem. So in the midst of every problem, there is always an opportunity. And I'm going to speak about those opportunities and how you can leverage these challenges and turn them into opportunities for growth. First is define your principles and your process. It's very easy to do things on vibe because, like I mentioned, and I've gone through these, and I'm sure like a couple of other people will have this kind of experience where there's no process. They just give you a PRD. Maybe your product manager gives you a PRD and you start working. Sometimes there's no research done. Sometimes you can't even tell if what you're working on is based on assumption or based on data. Sometimes you just do, so it's as if there's chaos. You know how they say startups are chaos? And like, that's what we have prevalence. We have like more startups. Those are people that hire more designers. And it's very easy for you to just do things on vibes or do things in no particular order. But that's the key recipe for you being frustrated, right? If especially if you want to create impact in your role. The first is design your principles. What matters to you? I, as a person, my own principle is the user, right? Number two is I like to ask questions. Where I lack understanding, it's important for me to ask questions. So that's my own standing principle. And no matter what the timeline or deadline is, if I don't understand something, I'm not going to work on it. I need to be able to ask questions and gain clarity, because as much as things move fast, right? If you're not moving in the right direction, then are we really moving fast? So as an individual, it's important that you define these principles, because that's going to be the foundation of all the work that you do. Then the other arm of it is process. Process is very important. You don't have to go through the whole, I know we have like different design processes like double diamond framework, design thinking, right? Those things are good, but create your own process, a process that works for you, works for the company you work at, works for the stage of the products that you're designing. The process that works at Space Stack design team will not work at a maybe at Facebook design team. So each team or each company have their own design process. And you as a solo designer, it's your responsibility as the first designer or the only designer to ensure that that process is laid there. Because any other person who's going to be hired is going to adopt that process that you have created. And in a situation whereby you have failed, or because of like work pressure or all that, you're not able to craft that process, it means that somebody else will craft it, because process needs to exist. So somebody else is going to craft the process, and what they may craft, you might not like it. So if research is important to you, then research should be part of your process. It doesn't even have to be a full-blown research skill. Even if it means talking to two or three people, that's enough. right? So I want us to like really understand that process doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be robotic. It has to be something that works for you and also works for your company. Don't copy process from other companies. Look at it and see, does this fit into the kind of design team that I want to be part of, right? The next thing is show the value of design. Remember that oftentimes you're working with people that don't necessarily understand what UX design is, right? I'm speaking from the angle of a UX designer. So sometimes we don't understand what UX design is or what product design is, or even like best practices, right? The whole the whole design thinking phase only makes sense to people who are designers. People that are not designers will not understand that. And because they won't understand it, it's going to be a bit difficult to convince those kind of people to say, oh, let's do research for this, or let's do usability testing on this thing we've worked on, or let's do competitive analysis, because they didn't understand like the deep impact of these things. There's every likelihood that they're going to refuse to. So how do you solve this problem is, one, you speak the language that they understand. For example, if you want to get like a product team to conduct research on a particular, maybe a particular problem or a particular flow, you could craft it in such a way that they also benefit from it. If, for example, maybe a button has a color and you want to change the color of the button, you could tell them that, oh, the button we currently have now, right? Feedback we've gotten from users says XXX. If we take a step back and redesign this, we have the possibility of increasing conversion. We have the possibility of increasing sign-up rates, or the sign-up forms we have. If we reduce some fields, if we redesign it. So you tying it to a metric that matters to them makes them feel more invested in it, instead of you just saying, oh, I don't like the button, or the button doesn't look, or users don't like the button, right? But if you tie it to something that matters to them, then they become invested in it. Another thing is using your design skill to solve like problem within the company. I recently, like, I worked at a company where there was a product we were working on, and it just seemed like everybody had different understanding of who the user was, understanding of what the product was. We had like three co-founders or four co-founders, and each of them had like different ideas on what they wanted the product to be. So how did I solve this problem? I brought in my design tool and design mindset and said, you know what, this is a problem. And the work of designers is to solve problems. So what I did was I created a workshop. And before the workshop, I told everybody that this is the goal of the workshop. This is what we're coming to do. And then within the workshop, I was able to like, okay, who are our users? And just on that call, we're able to trash out all the issues, all the contradictions, and basically get everybody to be on the same page. That's one way I was able to use design. And they also saw like, okay, this actually works. And then next time when we had like similar issue, somebody else from another team was like, well, maybe we should have a workshop. That way, they've seen how I was able to use design to bring value to the business and also solve problems. So key takeouts from this is, look within yourself. Are there other areas that you can use design to solve problem within the company? It could be like empathy mapping. If you understand, like, people have different understanding of our users. It could be user flows, maybe the user story we have. Engineering has a different understanding of user story. Product team have a different understanding of user story. What if we had like a call and then I mapped like the user flow and I visualize it and everybody sees it? Would that solve the problem? So doing all of these kind of like help other partners and stakeholders see the value of design. Then the next is build trust with your partners. This is a bit diplomatic, right? It's understanding that people matter and people have emotions, right? So how can you use those emotions, again, for designers, right? So see this as a design problem. How can we use those emotions and, how can we solve for those emotions? Because number one, we're working with people that don't understand what we do. So if we're telling them, let's do this, they may have doubts. Now, how can we build trust with these kind of people? I remember that was in orchestrate, right? I used to I used to join engineering calls, and I'm not an engineer. I don't understand engineering stuff, but I saw it that the issue that engineering and design have, where engineering kind of like see design as this evil twin that is always fighting them. Design is not looking the way I designed it. This is it. What if I could get them to see that we're on the same side? So I joined those calls, and it just at the end of, I think at the end of like 3 months or so, I could see how they felt more relaxed. Like, okay, Kachi is one of us. So those things that normally they would have escalated, it's say, oh, let's talk to Kachi, my G, let's say, okay, see now this thing. So it felt more like they could trust me. But imagine I approached it from an angle of, seeing them as a problem, right? I would not be able to build that relationship with them. So another way is identify your partners and how can you build trust with those people, right? This is very important. Learn more about your industry. It's very easy for design to fall into the trap of just design on Figma, right? But as much as we learn about our users, it's very important that we learn about our industry, because then you're shifting the focus of your partners and stakeholders from them just seeing you as the guy or lady or the person that does visual design to seeing you as a valuable partner, someone who is strategic. Now, imagine if we're in a meeting, right, and we're discussing maybe maybe, for example, maybe I'm working on a virtual cards feature, right, and we're having a brainstorming session, and we're talking, and I'm able to say, oh, yeah, see, so there's this new policy that CBN released about virtual cards and all that, and this is how I'm thinking about how this feature we're working on fits into it. It makes people, even people that are not attentive, like, okay, let's listen to what this person has to say, right? So that way you're able to demonstrate knowledge outside of design, right? You're able to demonstrate that you understand the business. You're able to show that you care about the business and how what you design fits into the priorities of the business. This is also like one way to thrive as a solo designer, because again, you have to make sure that you're not alone. Don't disappear into the background. Don't think because I'm the only designer, anywhere they put me or any condition they put me in, I'm just going to stay and be quiet. No, don't bow your head down, right? Instead, rise to the occasion. Take a seat, drag a seat, and get to the table, right? Design has come to the table. So instead of you just feeling like because it's only me, let me just behave like I have nobody. No, you have become a partner, right? Because when for example, now when businesses are thinking about their flows, if they have like any question relating to design, you're the person they're going to come to. And it doesn't matter whether you're a junior designer or a senior designer, or you're the design voice that they have. So it's very important that when they come calling, you're able to position design as, yes, design solves problem, and that's what I'm here to do. Then this is also very important to document your wins, because imposter syndrome will come, right? So it's very important that when you do something and you succeed at it, you document it, you write it so that the days when imposter syndrome comes, you're able to open maybe a folder, or you're able to open your files and see like, okay, I put this off, I did this. So probably not as bad as what imposter syndrome is making me think, right? If there's an initiative that you brought up at work, and then initiative pulled through and it was a success, you write it also. It doesn't matter whether it's a big win or it's a small win. What matters is that you have tools that you can use to fight imposter syndrome when it comes, because it's going to come. You don't have a manager or anybody that's going to reassure you that you're good enough. That responsibility falls on you, and documenting your wins is one way that you can win that battle. So wrapping up, I like to talk about these worksheets that I used. I also feel like maybe it's going to help someone there. So what I did was I had like tables of goal, the challenges, strategies, timeline, and impact. And what I did was my goal was what kind of design team do I want to have? What kind of design team do I dream of? Because automatically, yeah, automatically you're the design lead or you're the head of design, whatever it is. If they hire somebody else, you're going to be a superior to that person. So you're going to have like a direct report. What kind of design team do I want to have? Maybe I didn't have that when I was coming up or in other companies that I've worked in, but now I have the opportunity to influence design, to build the foundation of design. What kind of design team do I want to have? And then I write that on that goal. And then I ask myself, okay, what's stopping me from having this kind of design team, right? What's the gap between where I want to be and where I am now? And I just write down the challenges. Some of them could be UX maturity. Another could be maybe maybe the company doesn't really understand what design is. Another could be user research is not taken seriously here. So it depends on the challenge that you're facing. What matters is that you're able to identify it and write it down. And then you ask yourself, okay, now that I've identified the goal and then the challenges, what strategies can I put in place to address this challenge? And it can be any of the strategies that I've mentioned, right? You can say, okay, maybe UX maturity is low. What do I want to do? Maybe I want to explain to people what UX design is. And I can say, okay, maybe I want to schedule one-on-one calls with my stakeholders, right? People that I work with. Maybe it's engineering or it's marketing or it's sales. I want to schedule one-on-one call with at least everybody on this team so that I can just get to know them, maybe even talk to them about what UX design is, ask them what they think I even do in the company. And maybe from there, I can just tell them one or two things about UX design and all that. It can be, oh, I don't like the way research is done. Okay, who is currently doing research? I need to partner with this person. Can I share resources with this person? So identifying what the challenge is, then you can think of the strategy that you can put in place to address that challenge. Now, timeline is very important, just like every product or every project, timeline is important. So we can say we want to run this experiment for 3 months or 2 months, right? Now, what happens is within that 2 months, for the challenge that I have identified and the strategy that I want to use, I'm going to use those strategies for those challenges, and then I'm going to track it on that 3 months. Now, at the end of the 3 months, I want to come back and review, like, okay, how did it go? Did that strategy work? Was there a change from how things were before to how they are now? If the impact is significant, you note it down. If it's not significant, you also note it down. What happens is you're like, okay, this didn't work. Maybe I need to reassess. And then you come back again, write the goal. Maybe the goal now is to XXXX, the challenge I have, and then you find a different strategy, put a timeline to it, track it. I know it feels mundane, but the thing is, once you're able to identify these things and call them out and be intentional about it, then you're able to like make more impact in your role. You're also able to actively take steps to solve problems instead of just like complaining about how things are and all that. You're actively taking steps. And the good thing is, even if you're not able to achieve 100% of your dream design team, you've created impact. You created impact in the lives of people that you work with. The next designer that either takes over from you or the next designer that gets added to the team is not going to go through the same issues, or at least with the same intensity as you battled, right? You've helped to reduce the person's problems or workload or challenges that they will face. And the people that you've worked with, they will always remember that when XXX worked with us, the person really contributed to business, the person helped us. So there's always that track evidence of the impact, even as you try to like thrive as a solo designer. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kachi. I learned quite a lot from this, and I'm definitely going to be applying this in my, you know, my job because I'm the only designer there. Thank you so much. If you
Thank
guys have
you.
any questions, you can, signify by raising up your hand and, you know, asking those questions, or you can send it in the chat. So I'll read it out and Kachi can answer them. Okay. Kachi, can they reach out to you on social media if they have any questions?
Yes, sure. I'm very happy to help.
All right, great. Um, Thank you so much. Okay, someone has a question. Um, so this particular question is, let me just ask. So if you're working as the solo designer, right? Like you said, you're the one making the decisions by yourself, right? There's nobody to say, oh, this is good, this is not good, and stuff like that. How do you deal with Oga Center design in that case?
Okay, that's an interesting question. um, so how I like to approach it is by asking questions. Really, there's really like so much you can uncover when you ask questions. Um, Let me give an example. Maybe, oh, Kachi, we need to work on this, that. And you're like, okay. And then maybe from there, you already see some things that, you're not sure about. You're like, okay, why are we solving this problem? Right? Who are we even solving this problem for? And then they could explain. And from there, if you have like more questions, you keep asking. Sometimes you ask some questions that even the person or the orga in quotes doesn't have answers to, right? And you're like, I think we should talk to people. I think we should actually talk to the people that we're trying to design for. And the reason why we do that is that one, we can even know if this thing we're trying to work on, right, is even a problem. Because if it's not a problem, what it means is that we've wasted time, right? We've wasted engineering efforts. So you're able to outline the implications of we not being on the right track. I think that that's one way you can approach it. And secondly is again tying things to metric. Even if the guy doesn't understand design, the guy knows where the business is succeeding and the business is not succeeding. So you're able to tie it to the things that matter to them. Like I mentioned in the case of the button design, instead of just saying, oh, we need to change the color of this, or maybe your guy says, oh, let's change the button from blue to red. I want red now. You're able to say, Oga, if we change this thing to red, if it goes wrong, what happens is when people come on this page, they are going to drop off. The number of people that are going to sign up on our product is going to reduce significantly. So if you're able to tie it to metrics that matter to them, then probably they will give you like more room, maybe not 100% room, but there are chances that you have like more room to negotiate like better design practices. So I think that that's one way you can approach it. I don't
All
know
right.
if I answered the person's question well, or if they have like more questions based on what I answered.
If I understand what you said correctly, we should basically speak the stakeholders' language so that they
Yeah.
understand better. Awesome.
Yes.
There's another question here. As a junior designer that's working solo, how does one balance your growth and your design deliverables?
Okay, that's a really good question. Remember I said your words is your own responsibility as a solo designer because like when you're working in teams, you probably have someone you report to and you have performance appraisals, you have a manager who looks at you and says, oh, if you want to get to the next level in your career, I've noticed this gap. I noticed you're not really good in this. This is your strength, this is your weakness. But if you're working as a solo designer, you don't have access to any of those stuff. So what I did was, one is communities. Design communities are really helpful. So they help to close that gap in terms of your career growth, right? You have people in those design communities that can help you. You can ask them questions and they can give you answers from a design point of view, right? You can also keep up with trends that you may miss out on because, of course, it's just you and your company. But if you have like communities you fall back on, or even like mentors, right, you learn a lot from them. So being able to balance your career and your deliverables is very important. As much as you do your day-to-day work, you should also look out for how are there ways that I need to upskill, right? I like to say, I know that this might be a privilege, but where possible, try to like work between office hours, right? Monday to Friday is for your employer. Use your weekend to upskill. Use your weekend to develop your career, not your job, to develop your career, right? It could be maybe you've noticed a gap in your skill set. Use like Saturday and Sunday to see how you can beef up those areas. So that way you're able to also balance your normal 9 to 5 work, and at the same time you're not lagging behind in terms of career too. So I think like that's one way you can do that.
Thank you so much. So the last question here with me is, at what point do you ask for more hands after working solo for like a while?
Okay, so if you're feeling overwhelmed, right? If the work is too much for you, don't come and kill yourself. The work is too much for you, then you should speak up. It depends on how the hierarchy is in your company, right? If you report to a product owner or you report to a technical lead, right? But whoever you report to, let them know that, oh, I think we should hire somebody else. The work is becoming much, right? And as much as I want to get work done, I want to also ensure that I do quality work. So it's not enough for the work to be done, it needs to be done properly. And right now, I really am not able to do that because we have so much growing demand. It may not happen the first time, right? But it's something you need to continuously advocate for. From time to time, you need to let the company know that they need to hire somebody else, right? Or to add more numbers designs in. So I think that's like one, if you're beginning to feel overwhelmed, then it's time for you to speak up and talk to whoever you report to.
Thank you so much, Kachi. That was very insightful. Really appreciate. Um, Kachi's socials are in the chat. She mentioned that you can reach out to her if you have any questions. Her Twitter and her LinkedIn is there. Our social media handles are also there. You guys can follow us so that you get updates on our sessions. It happens every Sunday by 8. Sometimes we have Twitter spaces and sometimes we have, Google Meet. Our YouTube channel has a ton of all of our recordings on there, and our newsletter also has summaries of our like TLDRs of our sessions so that you can read and understand. Thank you guys so much for attending. Thank you so much, Kachi. I really learned a lot from today's session, and I might even be sending you a DM. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right. Good night, guys. See you guys next week, Sunday.
Yeah. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.